I'd like to begin by thanking Raymond for this opportunity to present at Tangible Ireland Ambassador Summer School 2024, which has a worldwide reach, which is fantastic. My name is Anna Kavanagh, and I'm a retired school teacher, secondary school teacher, since 2018. And I'm here this morning to speak as co-founder and convener to an advocacy group called the Alliance of Birth Mothers Campaigning for Justice, which I helped to set up in 2019. And it has grown into Ireland's largest non-state funded, non-Tusla funded advocacy group for mothers in difficulties with Tusla, which is our child and family agency, the Family Court and the Gardaí. And on the 13th of June gone by, we presented at the Dáil Petitions Committee. And over the years, when I tell people about the work that we're doing, they're in disbelief and they say to me, "No, Anna, that can't be happening." That's not true. So we began our presentation in the Dáil on the 13th of June by just going through some of the newspaper headlines since January 2024 that captures the dysfunction in Tusla, or the Child and Family Protection Agency. So I just stand here to one side and I'm going to go through these very quickly. So beginning in January, judges rage over boy 15 in care who hadn't even one day of school since primary school. Tusla delays may be putting children at risk, 𝐬𝐿 finds. 𝐬𝐿 is the agency with responsibility for overseeing and monitoring Tusla, but when they find Tusla non-compliant with its statutory obligations, 𝐬𝐿 doesn't have the statutory powers to sanction Tusla, and that was our argument before the Petitions Committee. We're calling for legislation to give 𝐬𝐿 the powers to sanction Tusla when they find them non-compliant. Boy in foster care not seen by social workers for 10 months. Water for children in care being failed by Tusla staffing deficits. Quarter of children in state care from Cork and the Midwest. So in other words, your postal address to a huge extent will determine whether or not your children are taken into care. And we find that we have very few mothers come to us from Dublin. So obviously what's being done in Dublin seems to be working somewhat, but Cork and Limerick, Donegal, Mayo are the black spots. Garda probing claims unvetted care workers were given access to vulnerable children. Children in state care spent 297 nights in unregulated placements. This gentleman is very interesting. This is a story that was broken by Jack Power in the Irish Times back in February, where this gentleman here is operating a residential home for children, and it is alleged, and it is now a subject of a Garda investigation, that that he presented Tusla with forged curriculum vitae for his staff and forged Garda vetting documents. Now, he is one of the top 10 recipients of funding for residential care, and he received close on €10 million in under 2 years from Tusla. Garda investigation is underway that's relating to him. Tusla spent 40 million placing children with unvetted firms. Now, that then was followed up with another report after that by Debbie McCann in the Mail on Sunday, that the state spent 70 million on unsuitable housing for children in care, and this was in response to a Freedom of Information request by Deputy Peadar Tóibín, who is the leader of the 𝐴onTú party. And I have to commend Deputy Tóibín. He's one of a tiny handful of deputies who has been working with us on this issue. 10 companies were paid 58 million to run unregulated accommodation for children, and that means that they're not subject to any kind of inspections whatsoever. So children are placed there and they are just left, nobody is looking out for them. Tusla must accept whistleblowers' claims about unvetted care workers. So that involved a court case where Tusla tried to dismiss a whistleblower who was reporting on what was going on in these care homes that were not regulated. That's linked back to that other gentleman I showed you a few minutes ago. He was wanted in the UK. This here is Dr. Carol Coulter. She was up until recently the head of what is the Child Law Project, and there is an in-camera rule in the family courts, so it is a jailing offence for mothers to speak about what actually happens in the family court. And in response to the Ryan report of the state abuse of mothers and children that came out in 2013, the Child Law Project was set up to report on a selected number of court cases. So Dr. Carol Coulter was one of the founders of the Child Law Project, and she said, why are we still so badly failing children in care? And that is in response to what she is witnessing in the family courts. Internal Tusla documents reveal cases of children in emergency accommodation getting scabies and living in rooms with bed bugs. This is how we're treating the most vulnerable children in our country. Cost of each child in care is $330,000 a year, $7,000 a week. So there is huge, huge, huge money involved in taking children into state care in Ireland, huge vested interest. And as Deputy Verona Murphy said to Kate Duggan when she appeared before the Dáil Public Account Committee, for a fraction of what it would cost to support children in their own home, Tusla is not doing that, taking them into state care, and look at the cost. Tusla's budget is for 2024 is €1.1 billion, huge money in children. That's John Drennan in the Mail, I zoned in on that. It's €330,000 per year per child. €330,000 per year per child in state care. Tusla taking 2 years to investigate sexual abuse. I'll be coming back to that. 30 children in state care disappeared this year. The whereabouts of 22 are still unknown. Babies in state care placed in private unregulated settings, and I'll be speaking in a minute about newborn babies, a day old, taken from their mothers, being breastfed and being put into unregulated private settings. You wouldn't do it to an animal. You wouldn't actually remove a kitten from its mother. But yet in Ireland, we are removing newborn babies from their mothers. Why? It's not because they're drug addicts or alcoholics. It's because the possibility of future emotional harm. Children held in care for twice the legal limit. Irish Examiner, it's taken 78 years for child sex abuse cases to get to court. So we saw a minute ago it's taken 2 years for Tusla to investigate. Now it's taken 78 years for the cases to get to court. So if you're a 3-year-old child who has been sexually abused, it takes 2 years for Tusla to actually start to investigate it. So you're 5, and then you could be 10, 11, maybe 12 before the case actually comes before the courts. So there is no way that there's going to be prosecution, for the simple reason is, how can a child remember that far back? Now, this is an opinion piece. When it comes to the state's most vulnerable children, we don't seem to learn from our failures, and that again is another opinion piece. That was the Irish Times from Dr. Carol Coulter. Tusla reports doubling of children in state care who may have been targeted for sexual exploitation. So UCD published a report in June 2023 which showed that children in residential care are being targeted by predatory males and trafficked into the sex trade. And in actual fact, Peadar Trubeen raised in the Dáil earlier this year of the case of one child that went missing and was actually found locked up in a brothel 14 months later. Now that was, I put that in, that was, it appeared in Irish Legal News. It was when we were appearing before the Dáil Petitions Committee. Concerns over accommodation for children in state care. Jack Power has done fantastic work this year reporting on what's going on, and he's reporting for the Irish Times. After a lengthy FOI fight with Tusla, I got hold of copies of several damning internal inspections of emergency accommodation for children in care. So Jack Power, again, you know, stating how difficult it is for him and the resistance that he's getting from Tusla when he's trying to report on what's actually happening to children in state care. Again, another story, 39 children. So we saw 30 at the beginning of the year. That's now gone up to 39. Judge Sam's failure by Tusla to notify courts of children in care with no social worker. Now, if we go back to last year, Judge Dermot Sims sent 4 reports to Roderick O'Gorman expressing his huge concerns for the children that were appearing before him that were in state care. And the response of Roderick O'Gorman's department was to shred 3 of those 4 reports, citing difficulties with GDPR and so on. So on the 6th of February this year, Tusla had a bash in Dublin Castle celebrating its 10th anniversary, and Roderick O'Gorman, who's the Children's Minister, stood up at that, and it was reported by Jack Power in the Irish Times, and I'm quoting, that Tusla never gave him or the government a moment of concern. That is in spite of the fact of the UCD report that had come out saying children were being trafficked out of residential care into the sex trade, and the 4 reports that were sent to him by Judge Dermot Sims. Now, I want to compliment the journalists in mainstream media who are doing a fantastic job in holding power to account, which is the function of the 4th estate. This is Justine McCarthy in an opinion piece in the Irish Times saying a country that neglects children is not a great country at all, and that's an opinion piece on what's happening to children in state care. Now, Gareth Noble is one of the country's leading human rights lawyers. This is a tweet from him. Kate Duggan really should resign. Kate Duggan is the head of Tusla over these inexplicable court order breaches which she was made aware of but failed to escalate, and Judge Sam's failure by Tusla to notify courts of children in care that have no social workers. So Tusla actually is in contempt of a number of high court orders. Now, if I'm in contempt of court, I will be jailed. But Tusla appears to be a law unto itself. It can be in contempt of high court orders to look after vulnerable children, and there's no sanctions. That's actually before the Supreme Court at the minute. It was an issue that we raised in the Dáil on the 13th of June, and since then that issue is before the Supreme Court. It has been expedited. This is a judge saying, only the grace of God keeping children caught up in Tusla debacle alive. Judges in despair over lack of special care beds for some of the most vulnerable children. That was the Morning Ireland report on RT Radio 1. Again, Dr. Maria Corbett tweeting about the Child Law Project latest report, which came out in June, so this was a report on 70 different cases before the courts, and one of them refers to 6 placement changes in 6 weeks for 2 children aged 2 and 3. So these children are just being thrown around from Billy to Jack. Now, 2017 it emerged that Maurice McCabe, I won't go into this, but he had been falsely accused by Tusla of sexually abusing his children. It was the subject of the Charlton Tribunal. The social workers involved weren't sanctioned until December of last year and into January this year. One of them was struck off, but sure, he had already retired. This is the Niall Muldoon, the Children's Ombudsman. So here we have him speaking out, saying vulnerable children in state care are facing, and quoting him, desperate situation. An opinion piece by Mick Clifford in the Irish Examiner saying, has anything really changed at Tusla? In other words, they were copying and pasting and falsely accusing Morris of something that he didn't do. Now, I suppose the background to that was, and that was the subject of the tribunal, was there collusion between the Gardaí and Tusla that led Tusla to falsely accuse him of sexually abusing children at the time when he was whistleblowing on the penalty points and guards. Now, the finding of the tribunal was that it just happened to be an unfortunate coincidence. Now, this is from the latest report, the annual report of Tusla for 2023, which was published just over a month ago. They paid over $1 million to the staff, 4.8 million of non-compliant contracts, so they entered into contracts that weren't compliant with the proper state tendering procedures. 73 million is the estimate by the state's claim agency of the liability of outstanding compensation claims against the agency. Again, another opinion piece by Mick Clifford. Now, Tusla, strange as it may seem, child sex abuse is a criminal matter, but when it's reported to the Gardaí, they hand it over to Tusla to investigate it. And Tusla then will investigate it, and they have two categories, founded or unfounded. Now, unfounded means then there can be no prosecution, but it doesn't mean the sexual abuse didn't happen. It means that there isn't enough evidence to prove that it has in fact happened. And bearing in mind that this investigation might be carried out 2 years after it was first reported to them. This is the Rape Crisis Network of Ireland criticising Tusla for its failure to investigate child sex abuse. Again, same story, the journal. Now, this is an opinion piece that this is a tweet by Jack Power on an interview that was given by 3 district court judges in the Irish Times a month ago. Now, we have written to the Irish Times, they didn't publish our letter. We had huge difficulties with that one full page spread of the interviews with the 3 judges, because we felt that it was very biased towards social workers, and the entire piece didn't actually mention mothers once. Now, this is the amount of money that's been spent on private for-profit residential care, starting off in 2014 when Tusla was set up. It was 58 million. Last year that ballooned to 217 million. So Tusla, on the one hand, is saying that they want to place children with families, and they want to reduce the amount of children that are going into private for-profit residential care, but that's not actually happening. It's actually mushrooming. The childcare industry is increasingly being privatised for profit. 29 children died in the care system last year. So now this is last Sunday's Independent, and this is for Dr. Patrick McGarty, who is a lecturer in public policy at the Munster Technological University, and the headline there, as a society we're still failing the children who need us the most. And finally, the last slide is from Monday's Irish Times front page, State Care for Children Not Fit for Purpose. As you can see there, the newspapers has captured the dysfunction in our childcare system. And we had dinner last night, and somebody mentioned that you know, as a child they were sent down to the local Magdalen laundry to get sheets and so on, and it was the done thing, you just did it. And it was only recently that we found out what was actually going on in those Magdalen laundries. So people, years ago, we can forgive them for what happened in relation to state abuse of mothers and children by the state and by the religious orders, because people generally didn't know what was happening. But we now know that it is happening. It's hiding in plain sight, and there is nothing being done about it. Why is nothing being done about it? Because there isn't any pressure being put on politicians to do anything about it, because it doesn't affect the vast majority of people in Irish society. Now, we represent the mothers of the children who are the victims of this abuse. They cannot speak out. They are gagged by the in-camera rule in the family courts. If I am not looked after properly in a hospital, I can sue the hospital, I can appear in the media and so on, and speak about, you know, how things didn't work out for me. But if I'm a mother who is abused in the family court by Tusla, I cannot speak out. It's a jailing offence if I do. And yes, mothers have gone to jail for putting up posts on social media. Some of the issues, and I just touch on these, they're all subject of a podcast series that I have done called Justice for Birth Mothers, which is available on Spotify. I interviewed 20 mothers at length, and I got 20 ladies to do the voiceovers. So each podcast deals with a topic or an issue that was common to the mothers. So these mothers whose children are taken are typically from very poor areas, parenting on their own, were victims of domestic violence. Some of them grew up in the care system, and believe it or not, if you grew up in the care system, that's red flagged the minute you go to a maternity hospital. Or you don't have proper parenting skills because you grew up in the care system, so your child needs to be taken, your newborn needs to be taken. The issues that they raised is if they have a couple of children, they will be all separated, sent to different parts of the country. If a child tells the mother during access how they're being abused and the mother reports that, the response from Tusla is to block all access. Children are not being reunited. They don't seem to. Now, in law, there is to be a reunification programme, but we've only come across 1 or 2 cases of reunification. Tusla's little trick is that when a judge orders reunification, Tusla will change the social worker. The new social worker will say, oh, I'm new to this case, I need to redo all of the assessments again. So it's like a greasy pole, and you slip right back down and you're back at the beginning again. What else can I say? Mothers spoke to us about perjury, social workers, and because it's the in-camera rule and what goes on in the family court cannot be spoken about outside the family court, these social workers are getting away with perjury. So one mother, great sense of humour, she still hasn't got her children back, but the social worker said that she was soliciting for sex outside the local little store with her children watching on in the car. And that, when she got her file under Freedom of Information, that was in it. She was absolutely horrified and appalled. It took her 18 months to get that removed from the file. And she said to me when I was interviewing her, she said, did you ever hear anything so ridiculous? She said, if you were soliciting for sex, you wouldn't go outside Lidl's. She said, you'd stand outside someplace more upmarket, like Brown Thomas's or Marks and Spencer's perhaps, but definitely not Lidl's. I did touch a minute ago on the newborn babies being removed. Am I running out of time?
Just another minute.
Another minute. Okay. I didn't get to touch at all on the reporting of child sex abuse. If you report to the guards your child has been sexually abused, Tusla will, it's handed over to Tusla, and then it becomes a matter for the family courts. And we have a huge problem in Ireland where children in the family courts, the mother is accused of parental alienation, and custody of the children is being given to the perpetrator of the sexual abuse. And mothers then are blocked from ever seeing their children again. It's a matter that has been raised on more than 30 occasions in the Dáil by Deputy Bernard Durkin since September 2023. The Minister, Helen McEntee, Minister for Justice, keeps saying she'll do something about it. Nothing has been done about it. And she has met personally with some of the mothers that this has happened to, and she knows the stories firsthand. She's cried bitter tears over it, but she has done absolutely nothing. I'll just finish up now by saying, what can you do about it? It's probably your first time to hear about this issue. So I would say, try and educate yourself on what's actually happening. Tell your friends, family. If you come across information like this on social media, please share it. And all of you are very powerful people with strong political connections. I would urge you to speak to the politicians that you know and say this is a matter of great urgency and something needs to be done about it, because future generations will never forgive us, because we know it's happening and nothing is being done about it. And I mentioned Deputy Peadar Trobeen. The other deputies that I want to pay tribute to is Deputy Mattie McGrath, Deputy Bernard Durkin, Deputy Paul Murphy, Deputy Verona Murphy. And apart from that, silence from all of the other TDs. We've asked to meet with, we asked to meet with Simon Harris, with Micheál Martin, and I've met Mary Lou McDonald, the leader of Sinn Féin socially. She's promised to meet with us. Silence, silence. So thank you so much for listening. There's an awful lot more I could say.